Hello, and welcome to the Perfect Franchise Podcast.
I'm Kris, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Andrea.
In this podcast, we're on a mission to help you discover all that franchising has to offer.
We'll explore expert strategies, interview successful franchise owners, and give you the tools to make informed decisions.
So whether you're considering your options or you're ready to take that plunge, we're here to support you every step of the way.
So let's jump into today's episode. Hi, welcome to another episode of the TPF podcast. Today, we're super excited to have Mike Ciccarelli and Todd Weiss, both TPF consultants, many years of experience. Todd, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Kris.
We love the expert series, right, Kris? We like to bring our colleagues on, torture them with some questions, see what they say that's maybe a little bit different than potentially what we say to clients. And so this is a great series. I think kind of starting out this topic today, really where we want to focus the conversation is talking a little bit about some of the fears that our clients have, some of the stuff that's going on in the market, things that are bubbling up today that we're hearing every single day with our clients, right? And so let's kind of hit on that. So start out, either Mike or Todd, when you're coaching your clients, there's that inevitable fear that comes up. And sometimes it's just sort of natural hesitation. Sometimes it's just really fear. They hit a wall, there's ups and downs. How are you sort of coaching them and helping them along when they hit these sort of big life decisions that cause the fear?
Mike, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I'll have to say after 30 years in the industry, I've seen a lot of different processes, and I really appreciate a process that we use to really help clients navigate that. So in a nutshell, this is about getting past any assumptions and getting the facts. And one thing I've always appreciated about franchising is you have a very open due diligence process, right? You're going to have an opportunity to, not only learn what I call the keys to the kingdom, right? What are the proven systems and processes and resources that you can leverage as a franchisee to help set you up for success? You're not going at this alone, right? This is all about, and we've heard that saying, it's about being in business for yourself, not by yourself. And it's trusting our process, talking to franchisees, understanding what the franchisor is going to bring forward in systems and processes and resources that I mentioned earlier. And it's really about being disciplined and following, the pathway. The other thing I'll say as a coach is I like understanding what the fears are. What exactly is the client, struggling with? The bottom line is, you're looking to make a legacy decision. And, being an entrepreneur for a lot of years, just using myself here, fear and risk is a natural part of these types of conversations. The key in being a successful entrepreneur is how do you manage that fear?
Todd, add to that.
I was going to say, Andrea, and everything Mike said, spot on. One of the things that I do is first let the client know, the candidate know, early in the process that fear is, one, it's okay, it's normal, it's going to happen, and it should happen. You are thinking about getting into business, and there's risks associated with it, and whether you're thinking about doing it now or in the future, or you're in the business, it's going to rear its ugly head from time to time. So first acknowledge that it's going to happen, and then just talk through it and understand what it is, the uncertainty associated with it. I find when I bring it up to them up front to expect it, and then when those fears come up, understanding what's causing them and kind of working through each individual issue with respect to that.
Yeah. So one of the things you hit on, Mike, I think is important, and we talk to this all the time. Franchising, you said you have all this information to do your due diligence, right? If you were going out and starting your own business, you have to go out and figure that all out. You don't have those other people to lean on to ask the questions. That's part of this process. Is most of our clients are looking at these over 2 to 3 months to really dive in, ask the hard questions. We use the 6-factor questions here at Perfect Franchise to really dive in so that you don't get to that point where you hit a wall with fear. Everybody's going to get there, right? But it's helping you really ask it, dive in and see, okay, who else has already done this? is this going to be the right business for me? That's a really important part of it.
I also think it's important, for a client to believe in their skill sets and their experiences, right? You're betting on yourself, and you couple that with a proven business model. These are certainly things that I like taking the time coaching and having those conversations right up front, like Todd mentioned, to be able to navigate the waters the right way.
I love the 6-factor analysis that we use, and understanding that and bringing that up front. What does the franchise bring to the table? How do they generate the lead flow and lead generation for you to get you customers? I find, Andrea, that's the big fear for first time owners is it's not actually running the business. It's getting that new customer and where to find them. And if that can be scripted out, it's one of the big advantages of a franchise system is the good ones that they ferreted out that setting up that lead flow process. So if you can get enough customers or enough inquiries, your statistical probability of success is going to go up versus trying that on your own, starting from scratch and trying to create that. There's a lot of cost and time associated with creating that marketing equation.
Andrew's heard me say this before, and I think I've said it on the podcast before, but it bears repeating that I always try to help my clients separate fear from concerns, right? Concerns are valid. They are a lack of information. Concerns would be, I like the franchise, but I don't know if I understand the marketing plan well enough. Or I like the franchise, but I don't know if I can execute the marketing plan. I don't know if I'm that guy. Those are real concerns. And those can be remedied by more due diligence, asking more questions, getting the answers, getting to the bottom of it. Franchise, franchising though is a big life decision, and any big life decision is, it comes with just generalized fear, right? And it's beyond reason. It's physical. Like you get scared, get tight, your tummy gets butterflies, right? You got to be able to separate those two, right, and recognize it, because in any big life change, whether it's getting married, I knew she was a woman for me. I still was nervous, right? Having a kid, I want kids. This is scary. I'm sending my kid off to college. Like, I'm worried about so many things,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to not send them off to college, right? We work through it. We do our due diligence. We do the best we can. So the question I have for you guys though is, what'll happen oftentimes is somebody will go through the process maybe halfway, and um, they come to you and they say, you know what, I'm not sure this is the right time. I got a lot going on in my life. I'm getting ready to send my kids off to college. Maybe I should postpone this until after they're all settled in, or whatever it is. And a lot of times you're wondering, is it what's going on in your life, or is it just generalized fear? So how do you guys, or Andrea, how do you get to the bottom of that and help them figure out if there is really something that's making this not the right time to look at franchises, or whether this is just fear, bubbling up and taking, a particular form, and it could be, that fear has 1,000 different heads, right? So how do you guys handle that?
I had a client bring this up, Kris. Uh, uh, it happens all the time, as you know, figuring out the timing, but specifically with what's going on in the market today, uncertainty, tariffs, all the fun stuff, Dow fluctuating. And the reality is, this particular candidate would have brought this up even if that wasn't happening. I just could sense in that fear coming up. They're always looking for, like, I'm trying to time this as the right time. I think he had actually mentioned it earlier on in the consultation process. And one thing I brought up to him is, remember your why. Okay, why are we doing this? Why are we looking at this? And have that person articulate it. What's that motivating factor? What's your reason? Because that's the basis of why we're looking. Without that, you don't really have anything. And then geared towards more the timeline, right? This exact moment, things are uncertain. And they're always uncertain. There's going to be another reason 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now. The other thing I emphasize is, you might say yes to something right now, but you're not opening your doors for 6 months, 9 months, sometimes even longer. That's uncertain too. So you can't time it perfectly. And then when I got into framing it, like where are we going to be 6 months, 9 months from now? That anxiety of that person actually came down and said, "Yeah, that's a really good point." So that's one instance or story or that came up with me regarding your specific question.
Yeah. Thank you. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, just to add to Todd's point, life happens, right? I mean, it's one of those nuanced questions that I get and hear a lot, depending upon time of year. So, but yeah, a lot of this is focusing and always going back to the goals. I had a client that has had to slow down the process because work was really getting crazy, and it was reminding and remembering the conversation that we had when we first started. That's exactly why you're doing this. Not to mention, he's on the top chopping block of potentially losing the job. I mean, he shared with me that corporate America isn't what it was like 20 or 30 years ago, as an example, based on pausing the process. So he came to a conclusion after we talked that out and walked through it, understanding, that things happen, and it's really prioritizing, what's your goal? What are your priorities, right? If this is a priority for you, then you're taking advantage and understanding that this is a mutual evaluation process, and you want to be able to make sure that the fears or excuses aren't getting in the way of you achieving what you're ultimately looking to do. Think of how things are going to look 3 to 5 years from now. And when it does, it of course, the other side of that, and it's always going to depend on the situation. Is this a temporary situation that's going on in my client's life, or is this something that uh, could truly have an impact on their due diligence process and success, like a health issue, right? You have to weigh those things out, but most importantly, it's leaning in and understanding some of the potential roadblocks that could come up early on in the process, and that to me is the basis of a good relationship when you're coaching somebody through a legacy decision like this.
Andrea, I'm not going to let you off the hook. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things is, and I think that my clients can relate to this. So if I look back at when David and I started the first business, timing couldn't have been worse. Honestly, we were 30. We were moving. We were finishing grad school. We were graduating from graduate school, going to move. We had a 1-year-old, and then we had another one on the way. And we bought a franchise. And crazy, you know what I mean? Like, you think of timing, worst possible time. There's so many things going on. But when you go and you look back, when we sold the first franchise and bought the second franchise, we could have never afforded the second franchise we bought if we had done it, if we had started 5 years later and then done it, we would have been starting all over. And so I always say to people, it's one of these things where in the moment you have to assess, where are you trying to get to, right? Like, what's your long-term plan? It's not the short term, something's going on, someone's sick, this is going on in my life, I am busy. Everybody's sort of busy, and life is going to happen. There's going to be ups and downs, and something's always going to derail. So you have to really focus on, what are you trying to get to, and at what point in your life do you want to get to? So when I talk to clients and they say, I want to retire in 5 years, I'm so sick of the corporate grind. Okay, great. Do you have 5 years left? What do you want to do in retirement? Do you want to sit at the beach? Do you want to be busy with the business? Maybe you build it up now, and then it's carrying you through, where you can do a little bit of work and a little bit of beach time, or you could just, decide that. So it's really about mapping out, where do you want to go? What's your timeline? And yes, right now may not be great, but I can tell you, everybody who's bought a business doesn't look back and say, God, I wish I had waited 10 more years to do this. I don't know. That's not me. I'm glad I left corporate earlier on.
Yeah.
Well, it's like one of the questions I always ask too is are you, based on your current circumstance, if by doing nothing, are you in the same situation, or are you better off, worse off? And a lot of the folks we're working with, or I find I'm working with, are looking at this from a reason. They're in between jobs. There's some sort of challenge, and they're trying to fill a gap somewhere, and the business is that tool to do that. And you'll find most of the time, if you do nothing or wait, you probably are worse off or are losing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so, one of the things that prompted this particular podcast is we've been hearing from clients with very specific fears lately, right? And these are a little bit different than other generalized fears. They're fears about the market, right? And so, just to put it in the context of how I lay things out, again, I try to separate generalized, kind of primordial monkey brain fear from real concerns. We hear from clients that say, "Well, I've got real concerns about the market. My 401k is down, tariffs. I don't know what's going on. It's a wacky world right now. Maybe I should put things on hold." And it's really interesting because they could contend that those are concerns. Those are real. Those aren't just make believe fears, but yet they are concerns. I said earlier, concerns can be mitigated with more information and more due diligence. I would suggest that you can do all the due diligence you want trying to figure out what the market's going to do or how tariffs are really going to affect things. And I'm not sure how far you're going to get. So it's this unique phenomenon. How do you guys handle specifically clients coming and saying, "I want a franchise. I want to be a business owner so badly, but man, I don't know if it's the right time because of the market. It's up, it's down, tariffs, or I want to see who the next president is." How do you guys handle that? Because it's a unique thing.
Yeah, I not only have I talked about this, comes up all the time in that initial consultation, and this is really where I think franchising shines. At its core, a franchise provides a proven system, and a good system can adapt and can be leveraged in both good times and bad times. There's always going to be peaks and valleys. And I think the key here is, understanding. A lot of folks that come to me, they don't realize how vast the franchise landscape is. They don't have a good comprehension of the support and the systems and process that franchise is going to bring forward. And most importantly, the fact that they have a lot of control, right? A lot of people that come to me, they're looking to hedge or diversify. And you have control when you own your own business. You have a lot of control. You have a franchisor that can adapt to good times and bad times. And equally important, as I just said, there's all different types of franchises. Often I have a lot of my clients that are expecting us to go down the road of, fast food restaurants or brick and mortar retail. And the reality is you've got such a vast landscape out there with recession resistant, what I call recession resistant, or think of it this way, essential service business models, more of a need and a want, that can survive in whether the economy's good or bad. It just, there's so many different pathways that you can go down and leverage irrespective of what the market's doing.
The market's going to do that. The equity markets are going to do what they're going to do, and none of us have any control over them. If you, whether it's tariffs, geopolitical issues, trade wars. 5 years it was COVID. 15 years ago there was 2008, 2009. Sounds like that's when Andrea and David decided to open their franchise, or maybe it was on or around that time. But there's always going to be challenges in the market where there's going to be dips. If you look at the Dow over the last 100 years, it's up 10%. It's going to go up. It's going to go down. I think what Mike said is with a franchise and a business, it is an asset and income diversification tool. And it's not perfect, but you do have more control over it. You have control over the industry that you select. You have control over how the business is run. And it can be a very nice hedge against that market uncertainty.
Owning a franchise is not like owning a stock.
Yep. I mean, I think people feel it right now. They hear it, so they react to it. I'm not saying it's not out there. It's legit. To Chris's point, it's a concern, right? And it should be on people's minds. But at the same time, you're looking for sort of that longer term play, not a short term play. And
to take on what.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrea, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but to get back, everyone talks about how much they lost. But prior to everything happening with the tariffs, the stock market has doubled over the last 5 years. And prior to any of this news, if you looked at all the Wall Street stuff, which people probably weren't paying attention, they were saying the market's frothy, it's overvalued, everything is too high. And then something happens and it dips and everyone's shocked by that news. So you got to follow that news and that media narrative, because that sells advertising. So you kind of have to ferret through that a little bit. Sorry for interrupting you.
100%. No, I was going to hit on that too. Someone said on one of our team calls the other day, because we do meet on a regular basis a couple times a week, and we talk through this stuff on our team. And somebody said it was even lower last year. So I looked it up. Like last April, 2023 was lower than it is now, but it spiked really high in November. So there's all these fluctuations. And so this isn't a short-term play. And I think we hit on that when we talk about the family life of something's happening right now. You're looking at this as a longer-term play. You're not buying a business and selling it next year. That doesn't make sense. It is something that you're going to build up over time. And to your point, there's going to be variations where you got to pivot, do a little bit different marketing. Maybe you're going to do better than other businesses. We had a business during COVID. It really tanked off. It was a hair salon. Talk about something where you're touching people, you're face-to-face with them. You can do it. But honestly, we came back stronger. And it was less than a year later. So there's going to be ups and downs. Small businesses, you have the ability to control that. And I think the control that you don't have when you're out in corporate is these ups and downs. How many people are you getting calls from right now that have lost their job? No control over it. When you own your own business, you're not firing yourself, right? So it's a little bit more stable, I think.
2 points, as I mentioned earlier, get the assumptions, don't make assumptions, get the facts. And, to your point, Andrea, on our team's meeting, I think somebody made a big statement. At the end of the day, if you look at the Dow for the past 2 decades with the peaks and valleys, it's in double-digit plus territory. I think I know the guy that said that. And the other point is, look at where we've come since the pandemic. Not to bring up the ugly P word, but the fact of the matter is even during the most uncertain times that at least I ever lived through, we had businesses that thrived. I've got a good friend that is a multi-unit Domino's pizza franchise that saw some of the best, he broke records in sales and revenue during what most people thought was an extremely dark time for not only us, the world. So look at where we're at today.
Kris, you were talking about switching gears back to fear, and I just wanted to bring this up. We were talking about, is this the right time? And when you're talking, and I find when I'm talking to clients who are in a corporate role or in process of leaving a corporate role, and they talk about how miserable they are at their jobs. It's either company was acquired, there's a cultural shift, they don't like their boss, they're pushing certain agendas that they don't like, and the clients are having trouble getting out of bed. They're just not happy people, and it's impacting their lives. So when that fear comes up, oh, what about this right time? One of the things we try to do is frame, what if you had a choice to at least structure your schedule and your time of where to work and who you choose to work with and picking your customers and having that control? How does that possibility of success impact the fear and the timing? And a lot of times I find folks that can help subside it as well. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would say one last thing, and then I'll hand it over to Andrea to take us to the rapid fire questions, Andrea. But, clients have to be honest with themselves too. Anytime you go through a franchise discovery process, there's a lot of learning about yourself. There's a lot of introspection, and you need to be honest with yourself. Is this a legitimate concern, or is this an escape hatch? Is this something that allows you to give into the fear, put things on the back burner, put it back to someday I'll do it, and not give up on it. We're just postponing it, right? And we've seen folks that have postponed, their business ownership dreams forever, and they never start one. So people got to be honest with themselves, right? But
Yeah.
Andrea, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, and I think on that note, I got off with a client this morning, and she said to me, I asked her sort of what she was good at, what she wasn't good at, so you can kind of look into different opportunities. And she said, I have to admit, I probably have a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, I know if I sit down and I actually think about, I would be really good at a lot of aspects of business, but then I let myself get in my head, right? And that fear bubbles up. And I think with all of this, that's where you're like, oh, now is not the right time. Something's going on, so you put it off, or the market's really bad. But it's that fear of, I don't know if I can do it. And you kind of look back at your career and say, what have I done? I've been really successful in my career doing it for somebody else. Why can't I do it for myself with that foundation of franchise? And I think sometimes reminding our clients of that can really help. But, let's kind of wrap this up, and let's talk sort of in general. We've talked about market, we've talked about fear, things going on, but let's just kind of broadly talk about what do we tell our clients, and rapid fire questions. The first one, Todd, I'm going to ask you the first one. Mike, I'm going to give you the second one here. So Todd, give us sort of one thing that you tell somebody who's contemplating becoming a franchisee. What's the best piece of advice you could give them as they're exploring?
So the advice I really lean in onto people, and I do this at the first call. I do it throughout the entire process. And it's also a technique that comes up when the fear rears its head that we've talked about so much. And it's really, what's your why? What's your motivating factor? And I find with people that they don't always know what it is. Did a consult with somebody yesterday, perfect candidate, has all the reasons, I can feel it behind them. And she couldn't articulate the why until the very end, where it kind of was like a eureka moment. And that's really what's going to drive you and motivate you, particularly when you hit the challenge that you're going to hit, or the brick wall you're going to hit when you start your business. It's going to be a series of challenges you're going to run into from time to time. Is always go back to the why. What's the purpose? What's behind doing what you do? And that's the first probably the biggest piece of advice I give folks who are looking at this.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think, what we hear all the time is I lost my job. That's my why. That's not your why. Your why is you don't want to lose it again. You want control of your own schedule. So I think that's a great one, Todd. Thanks so much. So Mike, I'm gonna give you the second rapid fire question. So now fast forward. One of your clients has bought a business. They're in their first year of franchising. What's going to be your advice to them in that first year?
Yeah, remembering why you went into the franchise to begin with, and that is leveraging the systems and processes and resources that you have available, that you're subscribing to, right? That's the whole reason why you did it. So you bought into a proven business model, and at your disposal, you have a playbook, and it's on you to put together a plan. I'll tell you how I did it. I remember when I became a franchisee, how excited I was. And, I'm going to tell you, the way I was wired, I had a 30, 60, 90-day business plan. And it was great to be able to bounce that off of the resources that I had at my fingertips. The other thing I'll tell somebody is, don't forget the people that you met along the way. Right? I mean, some of the top 20, every franchise is on a bell curve. I made it a point to get to know that top 20%. Made it a point. They became my best friends, and they've been there and done it, or they're doing it and they're doing it well. So one of the biggest powers in assets that I believe a franchise system offers is that it's a collaborative group. It's so much different than what most people are used to. And I say this generally in certain corporate environments. You have people that you can collaborate with. You've got people on the franchisor side that are there to help you execute a playbook. What's your plan?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great advice. Well, thank you both so much for coming on today. I know, this is something that we're hearing a lot from our clients. There's sort of this fear that we hear on a regular basis, but this extra fear about the market and timing. And I think the message is, market's going to change. That's just going to happen. That's just the nature. This is a longer term play, not a short term play. And your fear is going to be there. So it's really about sort of helping you manage it and figure out, what is your why? Is this a dream that you really want? So let's look at this as sort of a longer term play to meet that why of why you're looking into it. So thank you both so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So if you're thinking about franchising, remember that while there's no one size fits all, the perfect franchise for you is definitely out there. To explore your options, visit theperfectfranchise.com and click on Let's Talk to schedule a call with the consultant on the Perfect Franchise team. We look forward to connecting with you again on our next episode.